Tomorrow night at 8, Paula loves a married man and she'll do anything to keep him, even kill. Anthony Hopkins, Lisa Hilbolt, and Ciaran Madden star in the shocking climax of A Married Man. Now stay tuned for the Independent News. 11's Alive with the Independent News next.
Snack a pack. It's a handy dandy light and lively six-pack. Snack it, smack it, back it, pack it, tuck one in your jacket.
Yogurt lovers, you'll love the money-saving six-pack of light and lively low-fat yogurt. So smooth, creamy, fruity, and delicious.
So stock a sack, get the knack of the handy dandy light and lively six-pack.
WCBS News Radio. It's news all day, all night. It's weather updates every 10 minutes. It's reports on business and finance. It's sports twice an hour. It's repeated time checks around the clock. It's information on health, films, food, and travel. WCBS News Radio. It's everything you need to know and more. WCBS News Radio. It's at 88 on your AM dial.
Are you still using AT&T instead of MCI for long distance? Well, I hope you're happy. Because by not using MCI's more modern, up-to-date system, all you're doing is taking money out of your pocket and handing it over to AT&T. Well, not that they don't appreciate it. They do. In fact, every month they send you a thank you note. It's called the bill.
Call MCI now. Join Burt Lancaster and nearly 2 million others saving up to 30, 40, even 50% on their out-of-state calls.
Chicago. In this city of great restaurants, one very special one stands out. Cricket's. Tonight, we're secretly replacing the fine coffee they usually serve with dark, sparkling Folgers crystals. Let's watch.
It's got a real full, rich flavor. Yeah.
Very, very rich. It's Folgers Instant.
What?
Oh, my goodness.
I don't believe it. It's delicious.
Excellent.
My coffee from now on, Folgers.
Folgers Crystals. Coffee rich enough to be served in America's finest restaurants.
I call you killer, 'cause you slay me.
And I'm calling Bellevue 'cause you're not.
The Honeymooners tonight at 11:30. Tonight on the Independent News at 10. The latest on the heavy rains that could bring serious flooding to our area. Our inside story looks at who profits when you say, I do. And we'll see the president pumping iron.
Good evening. I'm Pat Harper.
And I'm Steve Bosch. The heavy rain that's been pounding the metropolitan area since yesterday has begun to cause some flooding, and the worst may be yet to come. 4.5 inches of rain have soaked parts of northern New Jersey, where rivers are starting to overflow their banks. A flood watch for the area has been upgraded to a flash flood warning in Bergen County. In New York, Rockland County has been issued a flood warning, and there's a flood watch in effect for Westchester County.
Our meteorologist, Bob Harris, has been keeping watch over this storm, as you would expect, and he's here to tell us what to expect tomorrow morning in the metropolitan area. Bob.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Good evening, everyone. Indeed, we have more problems ahead. The rains are not over with. It's raining lightly around the tri-state area right now, but the frontal system that you see extending from upstate New York right down to Florida is loaded with moisture and will continue along this interface with cool air pressing up against warm, moist air, continue to produce heavy showers and thunderstorms in our viewing area. I just received a call from the Oakland, New Jersey Police Department. The lieutenant there informs me that the Ramapo River, which caused so much problems along that stretch all the way from Mahwah down to Pompton Lakes just about a month or so ago, has begun to flood again. It is out of its banks. They're watching it very carefully. We're monitoring all the streams and rivers around the region, and that flooding is apt to continue because more discharge will occur in the rivers. The runoff from the land, the ground is totally saturated, and also more rain expected, as much as another inch of precipitation along this frontal zone during the next 12 to 24 hours. Now, we're going to update our forecast for you, let you know when we think the sun is going to shine again, and it will, but we'll do that a little later in our broadcast. In the meantime, here's Patricia.
Thank you, Bob. American-made missiles are poised for action tonight to be manned by Saudi Arabians who want to defend their oil. Stinger anti-aircraft missiles have been delivered to Saudi Arabia, courtesy of President Reagan, and a U.S. tanker plane is standing by to refuel Saudi fighter jets. John Aubuchon has this report from Washington.
The 400 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles and one additional aerial refueling tanker, a big KC-10, arrived in Saudi Arabia yesterday, and President Reagan actually signed the papers transferring the Stingers to the Saudis this morning before leaving for Colorado. The administration calls it an emergency.
Because the Stinger system can be deployed in the field shortly after delivery, its immediate transfer will quickly contribute to Saudi Arabian air defenses. By providing a deterrent against hostile actions, this transfer lowers the risk of broader conflict.
The Saudis, with 60 F-15s bought from the U.S. and support from American AWACS radar planes based there, are reported taking the lead in establishing a zone of protection for oil shipping along the western coast of the Persian Gulf, with other Arab oil states eventually helping. Saudi air and naval patrols would protect tankers from the Strait of Hormuz, at least as far north as the port of Ras Tanura. The new aerial tanker, along with 3 KC-135s already there, will be available to refuel Saudi F-15s in flight, letting them stay aloft longer than the 90 minutes their current fuel tanks allow. The U.S. is also speeding up delivery of new longer-range fuel tanks for the Saudi fighters. The Stingers would be used to protect shore installations and carried aboard naval patrol boats. Naval aviation expert Mark Hill says the Saudis now should be able to keep the Gulf open to oil shipping.
At this point, I'd say, with the support of the KC-135 tankers, yes, assuming we get no further escalation. Further escalation, of course, could come in the form of other weapon suppliers and other sophisticated weapons in the hands of both the adversaries, Iran and Iraq.
But Admiral Hill says Washington should be consulting with its European allies and other Gulf oil users like Japan right now, and should be prepared to intervene militarily, jointly with them, in case Saudi Arabia cannot handle the job alone. For the Independent News, John Aubuchon in Washington.
The Secretary General of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has ruled out the possibility of NATO intervention in the Gulf War. General Joseph Luns of Holland says NATO will not get involved because the Persian Gulf is not part of the territory covered by NATO. Luns made those comments before the opening of a 2-day meeting of NATO foreign ministers. He did say, however, that most Western European countries would probably help defend oil shipping lanes in the Gulf if the United States asked them to.
In Jerusalem, an Israeli newspaper is disputing statements made by Defense Minister Moshe Arens. Arens had said he was not present last month when 2 Palestinian hijackers were taken away and beaten to death by Israeli soldiers. The newspaper Hadashot printed photographs which appear to place Arens at the scene as one of the hijackers is being escorted away alive. And meanwhile, one of 27 members of an alleged Jewish terror underground pleaded guilty today. The 26 West Bank settlers indicted with him will go on trial in mid-June. Their charges range from sabotage to murder. Mark Levy reports from Jerusalem.
The case of the Jewish underground has split the Jewish settlement movement on the West Bank. About 300 settlers gathered outside the Jerusalem police lockup, where the suspects were being held, on the 4th anniversary of the killing of 6 Jews in the West Bank city of Hebron by Palestinian gunmen. The demonstrators charge it's the government that is responsible for the Jewish underground activity.
Security matters should and can be only taken care of in the best way by our government and by our security forces. But when a person comes to such a state of distress, and after warning the security forces that some terrible things may happen, and then seeing that eventually this terrible slaughtering took place, this certainly made people feel that if they won't take the actions into their own hands, then more Jewish life will be endangered.
Rabbi Waldman, one of the spiritual leaders of the settlement movement, was himself detained for 2 days of questioning about the underground. But the settlers at the demonstration don't represent the views of all the Jews on the West Bank.
Most of the people are very much against any use of force against any innocent individuals, whether they be Jew, Arab, child, adult, in any way, in any fashion.
Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir declares Jewish settlements will continue to go up in the West Bank despite the underground. And other leaders here warn against tarring all the settlers with the brush of the underground crimes. But even the settlement founders are worried about one fact. The people charged with these serious crimes, including gunning down Palestinian college students, maiming Palestinian mayors, and trying to blow up Arab buses in Jerusalem, the suspects come from the mainstream of the Jewish settlement movement, not the lunatic fringe. For the Independent News, this is Mark Levy in Jerusalem.
As expected, Egyptian President Mubarak's ruling party won an overwhelming victory in Sunday's national parliamentary elections, with the final results in Mubarak's National Democratic Party captured 73% of the vote. The rightist opposition party got 15%. That's the strongest showing since the military coup back in 1952.
The Independent News brought to you by High Point Coffee and by Dial Soap.
Primitive man thought it was a monster eating the sun. Still ahead on the Independent News, how to safely view tomorrow's eclipse.
Love is better the second time around, if you're a coffee lover. When I gave up caffeine, I just knew coffee wouldn't be a pleasure anymore. Then I tried High Point decaffeinated. What flavor. I fell in love all over again.
You see, High Point decaffeinated starts with 100% of the whole coffee bean, brews it to the height of flavor and aroma, and captures that just for you.
Try High Point and fall in love with coffee all over again.
Now available for restaurants.
Remember the first time he saw you, because Oil of Olay helps replenish precious fluids, greaselessly easing dryness and softening the signs of time.
First time ever I saw your face.
Oil of Olay, it can help you look younger too.
When I told my friends I was vacationing in Palm Beach, I didn't tell them that Palm Beach is a whole enormous county with all kinds of different places to stay. And I didn't tell them that the weather is just as lovely out of season as it is in season. So I didn't have to tell them how little I spent to vacation like a king. After all, why not use a few myths about Palm Beach to create a few myths about yourself?
If you drive a car or ride in one, this message is for you.
Volvo from Gothenburg, Sweden was the first car maker to install 3-point seat belts as standard equipment. The belts are incredibly strong, comfortable to wear, and someday one of them could save your life. But only if you buckle it up. Your Metro New York, New Jersey Volvo dealers.
Governor Cuomo's battle to raise New York's legal drinking age from 19 to 21 is right now being debated in the state assembly. A vote on the controversial bill is expected sometime tonight. The Senate has recessed for the day and says it will not consider the measure unless it has assembly approval. The drinking age was raised from 18 to 19 in December of 1982.
Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, and Marvin Hagler have all achieved fame and fortune through professional boxing. But not all fighters' stories are happy ones. Correspondent Dick Oliver has a special report on Billy Collins, Jr., a fighter whose career came to a tragic end.
Last June, I was one of the boxing fans at Madison Square Garden for the Roberto Duran-Davy Moore fight. On the undercard was a bout between Billy Collins, Jr., they called him Irish Billy Collins, and Luis Resto. It was quite a fight. What a fight it was. Collins in the green trunks, 22 years old, never beaten, a junior middleweight. He was expected to be a champion someday. This was all he ever dreamed of. A clean kid, pursuing his dream. He never drank, he didn't smoke, he didn't do drugs. His high was his dream of being a champion. Collins was destroyed in the fight. For 10 rounds, Resto pounded his face into pulp. He could barely open his eyes for days. He was finished as a fighter. The doctors told Collins he could never fight again. The eye injuries were permanent. Immediately after the fight, Billy Collins Sr., his manager and father, jumped into the ring and grabbed Resto's gloves. He sensed what was going on.
Holy commissioner! All the pens on him, damn glove. All the pens on him, goddamn glove. They're all out. They're all out.
Resto's gloves had been doctored. Most of the horsehair padding had been removed. It was as though he was fighting with taped knuckles. Resto and his manager have been barred from boxing in New York State. Collins never had a chance. He went from being a ranking professional fighter, a fighter with a dream, to being a $5 an hour laborer. He took to drinking, heavy drinking. Recently, he lost control of his 1972 Oldsmobile in Tennessee and drove it into a creek and died. He drowned. The coroner said he was drunk. I've learned that Manhattan DA Robert Morgenthau's office is presenting evidence to a grand jury. Indictments against those who doctored Resto's gloves are expected. I'm Dick Oliver.
Nearly 24 people were hurt this morning when an Amtrak train headed for Washington from Chicago suddenly jumped the tracks. 5 of the 7 cars and both locomotives derailed about 55 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. More than 100 people were on board. Most of the injuries were said to be minor. Authorities believe that weather was the culprit here. The tracks had apparently been washed out by heavy rains.
Jesse Jackson is back on the campaign trail tonight following a 2-day visit to Mexico. Jackson is calling the trip non-political, but he used the occasion to announce a massive peace rally to be held at the U.S.-Mexican border on the 4th of July. The rally, he says, will be an opportunity for the youth of North, South, and Central America to reach out to one another. The Democratic presidential race continues to have a bi-coastal flavor. Before flying to California, Walter Mondale met with victims of asbestos exposure in Manville, New Jersey. Gary Hart will remain in the Garden State through tomorrow before heading west. Today, he stressed high technology, saying the country must pursue change and not flee from it. Together, New Jersey and California will choose more than 400 convention delegates in next Tuesday's primaries. Mr. Mondale got another boost toward the nomination today, picking up the endorsement of Texas Governor Mark White.
Some astronomers are calling it an event of a lifetime. Beginning tomorrow afternoon, the moon passes between the sun and Earth in what is expected to be a spectacular solar eclipse. Christy Whitker reports on what you can expect to see and how to enjoy this rare celestial event without damaging your eyes. An eclipse of the sun occurs when the moon passes between the Earth, seen here on the left side of the screen, and the sun on the right, blocking out all or part of the sun we see from Earth. Dr. William Gooch, chairman of New York's Hayden Planetarium, says tomorrow's phenomenon, which will be at least partly visible in every state except Alaska, is called an annular eclipse, named for the ring or annulus of sunlight which will appear around it.
The moon's a little too far away from the Earth this time to be large enough in the sky to completely blot out the bright disk of the sun. So little pieces of the sun will peek around the edge, forming kind of a diamond necklace in the sky.
The eclipse will begin at dawn over the Pacific south of Hawaii and end at sunset over West Africa.
The people with the best seats in the house, who will see over 99% of the sun covered, live on a line from Mexico up through Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, through Virginia, and off the Delmarva Peninsula.
Doctors stress that at no point should anyone look directly at the eclipse because the intensity of light from even the smallest area can burn the retina of the eyes, causing severe damage and even blindness. The safest way to see the eclipse, they say, is to project an image of the sun and look only at that projected image. One way to do this is to cut 2 holes in the end of a long box and stick a pair of binoculars through those holes aimed at the sun while you look at the sun's image on a piece of white paper at the opposite end of the box.
If you don't have binoculars, no problem. Just take a card or a piece of aluminum foil and with a pin, punch a little hole in the card and place it over a larger hole cut in the edge of the box. Point the pinhole at the sun and again, look down here.
If you miss tomorrow's eclipse, it won't be until the year 2017 that the continental United States will be treated to another total eclipse, crossing the country from coast to coast. For the Independent News, this is Christy Whitker in New York.
Coming up, a presidential workout and a pep talk for America's Olympic athletes.
Now
there's a brand new soap that's twice as effective as the #1 deodorant soap, Dial. 2 times better because it has an exclusive formula that's 2 times more effective at killing odor-causing bacteria to give you the most advanced deodorant protection you can get and all the confidence you want. What is this extraordinary new soap? The best Dial ever. And aren't you glad?
Say, what's that cereal you're enjoying?
Ah, all these dates.
And raisins.
And walnuts.
It's fruit and...
Fruit and... we forget.
Post-fruit and fiber cereal tastes so good, you forget the fiber. You get the goodness of high fiber mixed with tender dates, plump raisins, and crunchy walnuts in a combination so delicious.
The name? Fruit and...
Can I help, Dad?
Fruit and fiber tastes so good, you forget the fiber. Also with apples and cinnamon.
This is Chablis wine. Most of you like Chablis because it has a dry taste. Well, if you like Chablis, you're going to love Molinari Suave. Like turns to love Molinari Suave because Molinari Suave has an even drier taste than Chablis. And like many of the world's finest wines, it is imported. So, next time try Molinari Suave, and with the first sip, you'll know why. If you like Chablis, you'll love Molinari Suave.
As a Saab owner, you may recall other cars you've owned. Cars that offered sportiness at the expense of practicality, or practicality at the expense of fun, or status at the expense of expense. Of course, you don't have to own other cars to appreciate a Saab, but it can be very convincing.
Buy or lease your new Saab from your local Saab dealer.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Minolta.
They say love makes the world go round. But when it comes to marriage, you need money, oftentimes lots of it. The price of weddings in the 1980s has skyrocketed, but that hasn't stopped a real marriage boom. And to look at the high cost of tying the knot.
Here comes the bride. In fact, here comes 2.5 million of them this year. Many do their shopping at bridal expos and register for gifts at major department stores. While weddings are sentimental for the family, to people in the bridal industry, the bride and groom are a market. Most couples spend $9,000 to $14,000 on the wedding, the reception, and setting up house for the happy ever after.
10 years ago, couples were getting married on the beaches in California in cutoffs and jeans, and today there's a romantic renaissance, and we're seeing it in men's formal wear, we're seeing it in bridal dresses.
How much money are we talking about?
That's about $20 billion.
The wedding rate actually declined 2% this year for the first time since 1975, but demographers say that was just a blip caused by the recession, and the wedding business is the place to be.
The baby boom delayed marriage by a lot. So there's probably about 20, 21, 22 million people in their late 20s who are going to get married very soon. And 3/4 of all of the people who divorce eventually remarry. Most of them within the first 3 years of their divorce. There's no question in my mind that the number of marriages is going to rise a lot.
Nowadays, the groom often goes with the bride as she shops for everything from veils to video and singers to silver.
The young lady wants his opinion as to how does this look. And if he says he likes it, she buys it.
People are aware of the divorce statistics, and I think it frightens them. And I think that what they're looking for now is something more solid, something that will make the tie more binding, and I think a large wedding does that.
For a bride, there are 1,000 details to attend to. You have to choose a place to have your reception, flowers, perhaps a china and crystal pattern, a flavor for the cake, and, of course, a wedding gown. But when the big day arrives, everyone hopes the details will all fall into place and out of mind, as hopes for the future are joyfully spoken and, with family and friends looking on, celebrated. For most couples, a memorable and expensive part of the wedding is the reception for the guests afterwards, and the kinder caterers break the news gently.
You can run anywhere from $45 to $100 a person or more. It's important that the day be special and designed the way you want it to be, but it's still one day out of a lifetime. And there are so many different ways that you can do this that I don't like to see people get themselves into debt. And then the wedding is over and the bills last a long time.
And another good piece of advice is to set sentimentality aside when making final arrangements for the wedding.
Read the contracts. You can all of a sudden find yourself without the band. You thought the band was going to stay the evening, and they only had a 2-hour contract. All the preliminary planning that is done is really the crucial element for a successful wedding.
Couples say how you're going to tie the knot does depend on your pocketbook.
The dress I like is a lot of money, and just to have a reception for a few people is running into thousands of dollars. As long as there are people getting married, there are going to be people making money off people getting married.
What do you think about how much it costs to get married?
We better stay together after how much we're going to spend. It better be a marriage forever.
This is Donna Hanover for the Independent News.
And from weddings, we go to other forms of mergers, and the word is out that a U.S. tobacco company will join hands with the Chinese to roll off the first Sino-American cigarettes. R.J. Reynolds Tobacco of North Carolina has just signed a $20 million agreement with a Chinese cigarette factory. The partners plan to produce about 2 billion cigarettes next year. China should prove to be a good market because some 250 million of its citizens smoke. When was the last time you spent just 60 cents on a gallon of gas? Well, if you were traveling on Louisiana's Highway 15 yesterday, that was the going price to fill your tank with regular. And that's because 2 local stations in Winnsboro were fighting it out in a gas war. Lo and behold, the battle ended last night, and today prices jumped back up between 38 and 50 cents a gallon to about $1.10, more in line with national prices. But it was nice while it lasted.
Wall Street came back from the holiday in a mood to sell. The Dow hit a 15-month low, only a late rally.